shift a little bit. So coming back to the business side, what? So you're obviously family created this awesome thing, right? It's coming down to you. There's we talked. I think it was by third generation. Most estates or most fortunes are lost,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
How are you guys walking through this, or what kind of wisdom maybe you've gotten from mom and dad or grandpa or grandparents around this, or like how are you you and your sisters walking through this today to make sure it is around for the next 100 years and it
Right.
doesn't get lost in that
Yeah.
way?
So I mentioned generational skips. That was a huge one. That was something my grandfather started very early. He started his estate planning at a fairly young age. He witnessed too many of his other vintner friends in Sonoma and Napa County have to close their doors or sell property or sell out entirely just to pay the inheritance taxes. And he didn't want that for us.
California is the worst place
it is, yeah.
for this.
Yeah, it is. It's
the best and worst, right?
Yeah, it is. Doing business in California is not exactly fun at the moment. Hence why everybody's leaving.
Well, then that's tough for you. It's not like you can just up and leave like Tesla.
We're tied to the land.
Right?
Yeah. So we are first and foremost farmers and tied to the land. So Grandpa got very busy with the estate planning, and the corporation, is separate from our land for liability reasons, and so he had to start the process of gifting down the corporate shares and then also gifting down the land, and so every opportunity he had, he gifted the max. He passed away, February 2015. It was December 2014. He had made his last gift. And so I think he timed it. It was one of those where he was like, okay, my job's done. I will say, though, we're very, very complex. Everything's tied up in trusts. We probably have individually, I think we have about 21 trusts under each of us. Some of those are set up already as generational skips. Some of them go directly to us. My parents have already done their generational gifting. They're done gifting just about. They have a little bit left in land. My sisters and I have already started the processes as well. So
with our current exemption rates right now.
Exactly.
Right,
Yep.
yeah.
So taking advantage of certain laws before they change and all that. And obviously, election's going to determine what's next steps. But so the generational skips, the trusts, the living trusts are massive. Making sure that the land is handled a bit different than the corporation, but making sure that both are set up to be protected so that not the family can't just one member roll over the next day and be like, I'm done and want to sell out. So there are guardrails in place that my grandfather, I always said he place little Easter eggs throughout everything. And there's buy-sell stipulations as well built in. So and different parameters built in just to keep a family member from literally rolling over one day and handing it over to a spouse or to an outside investor. That's not allowed and set up in our bylaws. So we've got it buttoned up pretty good. We do minimize spousal involvement. So we do look at some of the older. So as you mentioned, not very many companies make it to fourth generation, especially in the U.S. We're babies, obviously, in comparison to old world and like the Antonori family that's pushing, I think, 29 generations, which is wild. But we look at what they do and how they have been able to keep their company and their family business for 29 years. Here in the States, we kind of have a saying that first generation starts it, second generation maintains it, third generation usually destroys it or sells it. So less than 2% actually make it to the fourth generation, and which is unfortunate. But us being babies, we have to look at the areas and the families where they've been successful in maintaining it for a lot longer than we have. And so we look at what some of their rules and policies are and bylaws are within the families. Fortunately, the family businesses, we all support family businesses. So everybody's very eager to share their experiences because we've all learned differently in different ways. Some of it by literally living through it and witnessing it. And then some of it is, a little bit more, some individuals are a little bit more hands off, but we all have very different experiences that we can bring to the table and bounce ideas off of each other, or things that worked or things that don't work. And so there are a few family business conferences and lots of family business consultants out there as well. I always preface, be careful with the consultants. They make a decent living off of telling family businesses what to do, and don't necessarily always get it done. So before you know it, you can spend quite a bit of money. But the things that they have brought to the table that has helped us is just being able to talk, make sure that your communication is open across the table, and like what the cousins want, and like I said, we're still navigating all of that and discussing all of that. But what does that look like? What does the future holds? And ultimately, we all six of us want to keep the family business going. So what does that look like? And right now, for us, we've decided, let's keep an executive team that's outside family members, have a board in place that does have outside board members, and also families, both sides of the family have seats at the table as well. So that allows us to kind of follow things, but then allow a CEO, outside board family member, to really, with an unbiased opinion, to really focus on what does that look like, and should we add more brands, diversify our portfolio, which we've been doing. During COVID, we ended up buying a brand out of Bordeaux and another brand out of Washington, and we're now importing a few other brands. So we've got trying to diversify our portfolio, so it's not just Napa Valley wines, and we also have another brand called, not in the sisters portfolio, but in the family corporation, called C. Mondavi and Family, C. Mondavi and Family is the parent name. The brand name is CK Mondavi, that my grandfather started in 1946, and that's your $5-6 bottle of wine, your $11 Magnum. It's actually a beautiful wine. We produce about 1.5 million cases, but stylistically, in comparison to its competitive set, it's very varietally correct and traditional. My family, selfishly, everything we make needs to be palatable by us. And we have high expectations, so we expect our juice to kind of follow suit as well. So I think that's where the family's involvement's best suited right now.
Good.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, I mean, I appreciate you, and thank you for sharing. Just from the involvement that we get on, a lot of times the larger estate, the more the problems. And there's kind of an assumption that, like, they got to be taken care of, and it's not the case. And we had a family this last year who found $1.5 million off the books just hanging out over there, right? And as it flows down into the family, it gets more and more complex because shares get diluted.
Exactly.
But it becomes so much more critical. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of consultants that don't know what's going on.
Oh yeah, I've lost track of how many people have been hired, or executive levels, employees, consultants, you name it, and everybody immediately looks at my dad and uncle, and I'm like, you're actually looking at the wrong people. I was like, and I was like, no disrespect to them, because they combined have more knowledge in our industry. Like, over 90% of the vintners out there, just based on their personal experiences and having grown up in the industry. And we have a lot of new blood and corporate blood in Napa Valley. So the two of them combined, and my dad, he's got an expert knowledge on land that I don't know anybody else in the Valley to have, outside of a couple vineyard managers and my father. And that is purely by experience. But so, you can't eliminate them, and nor do you want to eliminate them from the equation, because of the knowledge that they bring to the table. But most people think, like, the fourth generation, we've been handed the silver spoon and get a nice monthly check. And actually, I put on record, we don't do dividends, and so if you want a check from the family business, you're putting in hours, right, and you're hustling wine, you're slinging wine, you're traveling and meeting with sales managers and distributors and shaking hands with accounts. That's where that networking comes in play big time.
Yeah, talk on that. So we had talked about, like, just some things that and this is making sure that not just that, like, hey, we don't lose this third generation average that goes on, but that you're ensuring that, like, this, we're thriving into the next 100, right? So that was a key thing you talked about, was networking for you. That has been a big deal. How?
Yeah. So I should preface, mom and dad put my sisters and I to work every summer from the age of 10. So we had to clock in at 8 a.m., clocked out at 5 p.m. We got our hour lunch break while all of our friends were going to camp and having summer, swim meets and pool gatherings and barbecues. My sisters and I went to work. I have to like to think that that was actually my mother who was the one that kind of pushed us in that realm of things. But by the age of 12, we could train any UC Davis or viticulture or enologist studied student that would come through the doors. A lot of those schools at the time didn't have physical wineries for the students to actually get hands-on application. So they got most of their education through reading books, which, only carries you so far. Application takes you a hell of a lot further.
Right.
Having worked starting from the age of 10, by 12, we were training anybody that came through the door on how to run every single analysis on a bottle of wine you could possibly imagine. We were, our job was to go fetch the samples. That often sometimes included a wine bath. And then it would take it to the lab, run the analysis on it, whether it was pH, alcohol, you name it, VA, all of it. We ran all of the analysis on those wines. And so by 12, we're teaching 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and even 40-year-olds on how to run the same types of analysis and how to understand the industry. So I will say that that is like the start of the networking.
Yeah.
And I am very guilty of not understanding the power of networking until I was only like 10 years ago, when I realized all of these years I have shook so many hands and I've met so many people, and I always have a little Rolodex in my memory bank of some of these individuals that are wildly impressive. And do you think when I was 20 and 30 that I followed up or kept in contact? No. That was something that I learned, like I said, only a handful of years ago. Yeah. And it is one thing that when I have the younger generation, especially the kids in school that reach out and they ask for advice, I'm like, don't take for granted the networking and the people you meet, because if you, my grandfather always had a saying, surround yourself with people smarter than you. Yeah. And that's kind of something that all of my sisters and I have done, where we wouldn't be where we are today if it hadn't been for those around us that have helped either educate us. We haven't done everything right or the right way, but we've had the opportunity to lean into people that do have the knowledge and the expertise. And so when you are networking, you've got those people readily at your fingertips that are willing to help. And when people do offer, they usually mean it. They do want you to follow up, because we all want everybody to succeed, I think, in this world. And so if you can keep the networking and make sure you follow up, it will help a long way, and you never know what kind of dots it might connect down the road.
I love that. That's something that I've seen post. What the heck? My last year in the league was 2010, so we're almost 14 years removed now. This next month, since my injury before I died in Miami, where athletes do.
Oh boy!
And but something that I've seen that I love sharing, and it's something that's got reinforced from my mentors. It was like, talk to people like you're doing business 30 years from now. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, talk to, like, we're going to know each other 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, don't be so short-minded. Like, if you're trying to do business, whatever your goal is, don't be short-minded. You're trying to get this today.
Right.
And let's talk like we're going to be in each other's lives. And because you can feel like, just because of coming, I think what the NFL was good for me on was you got sold to daily. I still get sold to daily. We all do, right? But you had so many hands that were trying to come after you that it made you, me anyways, it made me sit back.
Guarded,
yeah. Like, what do you want from me? Mm-hmm. And so anybody that started burning that, you just veered away from it. And, but what I've seen is even from that time ago, you see relationships come back somehow. it's some weird way that
Right.
why would it ever tie to what this is today?
Yeah.
And where it's seen that, but I love it because I appreciate where your parents were at starting you guys early, because
Yep.
one, to me, you gained a respect for the company.
Yes, completely.
And what went into that, right?
Yep.
The work, not
Yes.
just the fruit that came from that, right?
By default, my sisters and I do not know how to not work. As most people, I've ruffled feathers just because none of us are willing to let grass grow under our feet. So, and sometimes we move and hustle a little bit quicker than some out there in the world. so it is one of those fun avenues to navigate. Is like I said, we're fiercely independent. We're also vocal. We're opinionated, and we're kind of stubborn Italian women. So for us, we hit the ground running, and we run fast. And you can either choose to hop on the bandwagon and keep up with us, or you kind of get left behind. And I will say, though, that some people that do get left behind end up circling back, and that's fine. We're always happy to revisit those, because you never know what role or what they're going to educate you or teach you, or what their I guess their position in your life story is going to be, and what that might entail. You have no idea. So it's never worth burning bridges or kicking somebody to the curb without knowing their whole story, because you never know what they can bring to the table after the fact, or how they can help. And that's how I found my mentorship. And that's the other thing. I think the power of networking, and then being able to find a mentor that can help educate you, whether it's emotional maturity, or starting a business from the ground level up, or if you end up getting in partnerships. Like, we've all had partnerships that have gone south, and how do you navigate those and handle those? What do those look like? And I think it's important that everybody have a mentorship, no matter the age.
Now, kind of segue into closing out a little bit. One, who's that mentor? Who's your mentor that you like? Like, I was talking about Erin, who's like the best lady in the world, but aside from my wife. But, but who's your mentor that was big in you?
Yeah. So for me, it was Kathy Simpson. She's a marketing consultant in Napa Valley. So for me, she taught me everything I needed to know about how to launch a brand and manage it, and every process in between. If I didn't have that knowledge, and if she didn't give me the opportunity to learn under her, we wouldn't have a Loft or Dark Matter. Or maybe we would, but we would have had to pay somebody to do it, and it come out very differently. Whereas I get to manage, and with my sisters, we get to manage these brands from start to finish because of the knowledge that she provided me. Again, emotional maturity as well is a big one that I needed to work on, only because of my short temper, but then also I came into the family business 12 years ago, like a bull in a china shop, and wondering how our doors were even still open. Yeah. I'm like, what? You guys are emailing out redacted employee handbooks. I was like, I can't read half the handbook because the system redacted half of it. I was like, that's a problem, you guys. And so of course I instantly had a bullseye on my back, and sure enough, from outside executives, and I've had half of the group or half of the individuals I've met that have tried mentoring me or whatnot, they've either said, you've got a bullseye on your back, you need to quiet, or I've had the other half go, don't change a thing, and keep that backbone, Alycia. So it's I feel like a constant tap dance that I'm trying to navigate. Is do I be the pit bull today, or do I be a little bit more soft-hearted and show some empathy? It's one that I'm constantly working on.
I think that's a good thing to have, though. Right? You gotta have a little bit of that discrepancy where I'm like, you got to feel whether I got to attack or not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an appropriate. You want to have the tool in your belt,
right? The
ability to attack when you need to,
exactly,
right? It's when you don't have the ability. You're not bringing any good quality if you don't have the ability to attack, and you can't do that, right? But it's when you have that capability and you're able to actively say no to it.
Yes. And it's having that knowledge and the experience or that mentor that can help you navigate those crunchy situations is critical. I tend to be a really quick read on individuals. The family now looks at me and they're like, "What was your thoughts?" And I instantly am like, "Asshole," and they'll be like, "Oh God, if Alycia says asshole, he's an asshole." And I just got myself in a situation where I was like, "I'm not going to love this partnership," and I knew right away. I was like, "This is good," but I've worked with assholes before. I can do this, and sure enough, couple months down the road, the partnership totally went south, and as my sister said, you were uncharacteristically nice through the whole thing, because I was sent her the emails and I'm like, where did I go wrong? I was like, can you explain this to me? And then my dad goes, your gut instinct that he was an asshole.
Yeah.
He goes, he's an asshole. He's never going to change his stripes. And it's better that the partnership didn't go further down the road. And I was like, and as soon as he suggested we part ways, I was instantly relieved, because I'm like, this is giving me ulcers already, and it should never. So it's, situations like that. It's like, follow your gut, and your gut actually carries you much further than we give it credit for.
Well, hey, I love it. Well, you said this earlier, the application is what you learn from. Right?
Absolutely. I almost went and got my master's degree, and my grandfather talked me out of it. And he goes, I'll pay for it. So the money wasn't an issue. He goes, if this is what you really want, I'll pay for it. But he goes, I can tell you, if you go to work tomorrow and get your job, like I was paralegaling at the time and trying to get back into the wine business. And actually, I should preface that our family has written and/or bylaws that each of us family member has to work outside the family business for 5 years before coming back in. That's whatever industry it might be, but that's just to give us knowledge and experience working under somebody else, learning the chain of commands, the ropes of how industries and different corporations are run. Some of us put that time, I put it into paralegaling and thought I was going to go to law school, and decided I wanted to, before I had even received any responses back from law schools, I sat my parents down and I said, I'm not going. And it was hugely because of my grandfather, who was like, what do you want to do in this world, and what's your goal? And do you need a book to get there, or do you need to lean on a mentor and apply yourself? And for me, I was like, $100,000 or a mentor. I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to save you money, Grandpa. And like I said, I have a lot of speaking engagements. I've spoken in front of at a Forbes conference in front of 1,000 people before, all the way down to I've got in 2 weeks I got to Colorado, and I've got 60 people in the room. So I've learned to pivot and adapt based on the group and the crowds. But that all came through application. I would have never figured that out reading a book at all. And just more exposure and get myself out there and apply myself. And I haven't done everything right. Some of it's been through trial and error. And then a lot of it, though, is I've had support of mentors through my life to help me.
I love, because we have some similarities in our stories there, is where, mine's not the business. The NFL is kind of like the highlight when somebody brings me in to talk. And it's, been super small groups to large conferences, and cool. But what I love about, I became a big reader several years back, but it just gave me ideas. Right. And it was like, go apply the idea. Exactly. And that's what I like about, asshole or not. Right. Is I got this from someone one time that was really good. It was you cause more damage by doing nothing than doing the wrong thing. Right. And because we can always pivot. Right. And so I love that. Well, do this. Let's close this out. But one question I love to ask is, if you're talking to somebody right now, and it could be them starting a business, mid-size, large, or it could be in your situation, in your shoes right now, where you're like, I'm trying to make sure this thing is thriving for the next 100 years. what's the biggest piece of wisdom you could give somebody in that situation, where whether it's financially or just practical wisdom, where like maybe if you were 10 years ago,
Yep.
you were like, hey dummy, this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this is a no-brainer that I should have been doing this whole time.
One step forward at a time, and at least it's moving forward. So that would be my biggest advice. Far too often we get stuck in fear, the what ifs, and you're never going to know unless you take that first step forward. So keep taking those steps forward, and like I said, if it's only one step a day, you're still moving forward. So yeah, and learn from those experiences and hurdles that are thrown your way. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
Man,
No,
Alycia,
thank
you are awesome.
Thank you.
So thankful for you, your sisters, your whole family, and like where everything's going on for you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wish you just everything to come this next 100 years.
No, I love it. Well, fun fact, our new CEO, because we did go through a couple challenging CEOs, and anyways, our new CEO we promoted within. He was with us, is our VP of sales for 6 years, and the family had hired some recruiters to help us find our next badass CEO. And my sisters and I looked at my dad and we're like, Dad, we've got somebody in the company if you give him a chance. Ex-NFL player, blew out his knees, and he was at Atlanta Falcons, I guess. His name's Dave Brown, but I don't even know what year it was, but he's in his late 40s now, maybe early 50s. But anyways, and he's a team player. He understands. He's the first CEO that we've ever had stepped in. He immediately sat down with every single employee we had, and we've got over about 120. And he said, "Are you happy? Do you like this department? Is there a different department you think you would excel or thrive in? And would you like the opportunity to switch?" That's actually how my sister got out of hustling wine on the road and ended up overseeing the DTC of marketing, or not marketing, of our hospitality department. And that was a gradual slow process and transition. But we probably had about 5 employees that took him up on the offer to dabble in a different department, and did an entire different job switch. And most of them are excelling 10 times better than they were in the previous department. And there's something about that team mentality that athletes bring to the table that you don't see from somebody that's just signing contracts and collecting checks at the highest level for a lot of these corporations. So he's been an absolute godsend to bring to the company, and I also refer to him as a mentor, just in his capability to navigate crunchy situations, and also the way he leads is pretty impressive. It's definitely one our family's very happy to have him at the helm right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's what do you know what position he played?
I want to say he was a linebacker.
Okay.
He's a big dude.
Big dude.
He's one of those, like, he's a total teddy bear if you get to know him, but when you look at him, you're like, I don't want to, excuse my language, but with him.
That's all right.
So yeah.
Hey, Alycia, thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing so much.
I love it.